In prisons, colonies, and various special institutions, there is a set of certain rules that must be followed. In principle, this is normal and corresponds to the norms of social and state structure. If you have committed an offense, you should answer for it, follow the rules like everyone else. But there are people in correctional institutions, and not only, who do not want to fulfill such rules and go into deaf denial, as they call it. And it is not always adherents of thieves' traditions and concepts. Moreover, such people often completely ignore both the regime of the administration and the concepts of the Blatniks, which is very much disliked by thieves and the administration. They are a kind of convinced anarchists of the prison world. But such people are extremely rare, and most of them fall under the concept of denialism, are adherents of Blatnoy romance who actively deny the rules and norms of correctional institutions. What types of prisoners are there? The colony administration, and many convicts, most often unofficially divides convicts into several categories, depending on their trustworthiness. Positive. These are those who actively cooperate with the administration of the correctional institution, including snitching. According to the concepts, such are considered red, goats, and are respected among other convicts, if the zone itself is not red. Neutrals are those who do not snitch and do not cooperate with the administration, but also do not resist it. Usually, such prisoners make up the bulk of all convicts. They work and quietly sit their term, not interfering also in the squabbles of the Blatniks. Also, such people are called men. Negative, for the most part, these are criminal elements. They deserve their name because they have a negative influence on other convicts, according to the administration, behave aggressively, do not obey the regime. But it should be remembered that denial in the eyes of the administration is a complete refusal to comply with the internal order of the correctional institution, rules, work, etc. At the same time, only concepts are fulfilled. It should be noted that such convicts almost immediately try to show it to the administration, which often leads to pain and suffering. That is, such convicts begin to try to actively break. In this case, breaking very often leads to all sorts of bad consequences and health problems. Break can be both physically and mentally. They may try to break and then just let it go, but this is very rare. Officers are capable of a variety of sophisticated methods, and not always with their own hands. They can be helped by other detainees, goats. Many cannot withstand such pressure and break down. By the way, this can hinder them later in their criminal career if they want it. But if you endure such torment, then absolutely everyone will respect you, and often even the administration. She will realize that you cannot break and will look for compromises and ways to negotiate so that there are not at least serious violations of the regime. But it should be noted, this is extremely rare. Ways to break a person. Unfortunately, there are indeed a lot of such ways, and they often lead to dire consequences. First, of course, the administration, if faced with a denier, tries to press psychologically. And for this, there are special psychological techniques. One of the most humane and widespread was the following method. A person was simply invited to the office and asked to write some lines of text that clearly threaten him. Then they politely inquired whether he understood the meaning of what he had written and let him go. Usually, such methods are followed by tougher ones. The person to be broken was also put in a punishment cell and connected there to loudspeakers, through which the rules or other texts were loudly recorded all day and night long. After a few days without sleep or rest, people would literally go crazy. This also applied to the lights. They could be turned up to maximum to prevent the convicts from getting a full rest. Also very common is such humane torture on the principle of the Italian strike. Just strictly force a person to comply with the rules. Doesn't comply? Apply quite legal punishments such as a punishment cell, etc. And so on until he begins to obey. Also, the staff cannot give the convict food, medical care, the ability to go to the toilet and so on. Literally make an animal out of a person.
Prohibitions can touch handovers, communication with relatives, or, on the contrary, there is also another common practice to bait a person. For example, to recognize his rightness, to give some liberties, and in return, just every day, to talk about how you spent your day week. After that, you are informed that you are a snitch, and if you do not cooperate, they will simply tell the blats or men, and they do not like such things. The reprisal can be quick. Of course, there are many options to break a person with the use of physical force. Employees rarely do such things. The position is more important. But if the administration went on principle, then anything is possible. They can simply beat a person somewhere where there are no cameras. They can rape him, quite a common practice. This will naturally become known to other prisoners, and the prisoner will become simply lowered. A popular torture is elephant, when a gas mask is put on the head of a poor person and the breathing hole in it is closed. The person is kept like this until he loses consciousness. He comes to consciousness, and then everything is repeated indefinitely until the desired result is achieved. In general, there is a huge number of variants, and if a person can survive it all, he is really worthy of respect. There were cases when the convicted person did not want to break, then they were left behind. But they started to take care of their relatives and close ones. They started threatening them, asking them to influence the disobedient relative, etc. It even came to the point that the relatives were harmed, not only psychologically, but also quite real. Press huts. A popular method of breaking a person is the so-called press hut. It is especially common in pre-trial detention centers. A press hut is a special cell where detainees working for the administration sit. Most often they are physically strong people who are not allowed to go to a normal hut or receive some preferential treatment from the administration. Such press huts are designed for one thing only, to break. For example, you need to induce a denialist to comply with the rules or to extract testimony for an investigator, the way to the press hut. Anything is possible here. They can persuade you to repent, beat you, rape you, turn your life into a nightmare. In general, everything that a person has enough imagination, and of course, depending on what instructions the administration will give. By the way, such people who sit in press houses are called wool. Woolly is, first of all, a dishonest prisoner. They are very much disliked in the zone and, if possible, try to make their life as difficult as possible, or even deprive them of it. Now it is clear why they try to fulfill the administration's orders as well as possible and stay in the pre-trial detention center. To summarize, we can say that first of all deniers are broken psychologically, then physically, but not with their own hands, sometimes already with their own means. But this is a huge rarity, and for the most part, it happens because of the weak nerves of the employees themselves. 99% of people have enough psychological tests because they are much more interesting than physical ones. And at the same time, there are a huge number of variations. For example, they can simply torment a convict with searches every hour. The administration has the right to do so. In general, as practice shows, the administration of correctional institutions has a rich imagination.